Recording in progress.
Okay, we begin. All right, so we're going to just go back a little bit to even though we finished, we were right before 156 in Daas Tevunos. So I want to go to the paragraph. Let me see if you guys have it. To the paragraph where it says V'hinei achar shebo gzeira gam al yitzias hamishpat lepoil. V'hinei achar shebo gzeira gam al yitzias hamishpat lepoil. Okay, that's about a paragraph or two before 156. So in the previous paragraphs he explained how the midas hamishpat also originates from the midah of ahava, right? So even though mishpat and ahava don't seem to be on the same, so to speak, on the same side of the coin, right? Mishpat is really judgment, which sounds severe, and ahava seems love, which sounds positive and happy. He says that the mishpat also originates from the ahava, right? And then part of the wisdom, of Hashem's wisdom, and also our wisdom, is the ability to connect the midah of mishpat to the midah of ahava, or other midas which don't necessarily seem at first glance to be related, to be able to realize the true source of something. That's part of wisdom. Okay. Now he's saying, now that there was a decree that mishpat should actualize itself, right? Then it is necessary for Hashem to hashkafa, to peer, to look down on all the creations as to what they are, right? So in other words, first of all, so now that, I think what he's saying is that now that mishpat is also an extension of ahava, so then then mishpat becomes a different story. It becomes, we'll see in a second. So in order to actualize this mishpat, you have to analyze the creations as to what they are. Leroy's, to see ma hu hamitztorich lahem lefi darkam. You have to see what is needed for them according to their ways. Umaye hamishpat, and what will be the judgment asher yivoseid litzarkom, which will be established for their needs. Right, again, so what he's saying is that now that the mishpat, I think what he's saying is, but now that the mishpat is an extension of ahava, so then analyzing the creations as to what they are, their nature, their ways, and see what is needed for them to kind of complete themselves. Because since a mishpat is a tool for ahava, which is a way to bring the reward to, and benefit to the creations, so you have to see what is necessary for them, right? It's not a question of, let me see how to punish them or how to put them in their place, so to speak. That's not what the purpose of the mishpat. The purpose is to elevate, to bring ahava. So you see what they are and what is necessary for them, what they're missing, and how to establish that. And even after this mishpat, not after this mishpat, meaning even after this contemplation, first you're going to establish this mishpat bichlal in a general framework. In other words, the headings of this mishpat. And then afterwards you will recognize the different ways one by one, lahavin dover mitvayis dover, to deduce one from the other, and to contemplate each detail to establish them properly. And this is simple. She'ein prat b'le klal she'yigdam elov. There's no such thing as a detail unless it has been preceded by some general principle. Right? Again, so this is a general Ramchal sort of style, that everything stems from some sort of general heading, and the detail is an extension, is a deduction from the general. Now, and after this whole contemplation, Yusmu hamishpotim al sidreim. Then the mishpotim are placed according to their order. Kivadai lo yiyu hamishpotim loitam maspik l'chol pertehem. Because certainly hamishpotim will not be established without reason necessary for their details. Amnam hamishpotim inyan echad. However, the mishpotim are one idea. V'tamei inyan acher, and the reasons for them is another idea. V'ein lonu le'arvam zeim zeh, and we should not be mixing them one with the other. Aval neida, we should know shekol hamishpotim asher soma kelas barach l'kol tzva hashemayim v'oretz. But we should know that all the judgment that Hashem established for all the hosts of Shamayim and Oretz, heaven and earth, and all the direction that He's guiding them, all of them are arranged after that He had contemplated with His wisdom and His understanding on all the creations. To decree, to decree and to bring about what is necessary for them, and make it a rule in His providence. And now, through this viewpoint, to this appreciation, will also then include the reasons for the judgments. So even though the judgments is one thing, the reasons are another thing, but when we appreciate the judgments through their kind of goals, then we understand them, in completion together with the reasons. Somebody who understands what Hashem was looking at, what He was thinking about when he put in place this mishpat, this judgment. He will know the reason for it, right? Whatever. So if he looks at what Hashem was looking at, that's going to give us what the reason for the mishpat is. And this is what we see, that when Hashem reveals His secrets to His prophets, and He makes them known to them His judgments, He first lets them know what it is that He was gazing at for His contemplation. Valma his boinein, and what he was contemplating about, losum kol sidrei mishpatim ha'ela, when he arranged all of these mishpatim, these judgments. V'nimtza shehashkafosei zois b'chlal ubeprat hi hamalida as hamishpat b'chol sedorov b'chol hatoli bo. So what comes out is that it's through this hashkafa, right, through his viewing, through his Hashem's contemplation, I don't say contemplation, through his observation, I would say, through this observation, b'chlalu b'prat, in general and in particular, that's what brings about the mishpat in all of its arrangements and details. Ubot tolu shanois es hamishpat usudorov l'fi atzoreh b'chol eluim u'ashpalos hamitztorachos l'olam, and that also will kind of cause the various changes that may arise in the mishpatim, on the ups and the downs. And all any necessary new tikkunim, any fixing that will be necessary for each appropriate time. However, this contemplation, which brings him out the mishpat, that never ceases to exist. Right, but its goal is to bring about the world and set it up on its stance, in every appropriate stance at every single moment in time. Right. So in other words, so in a certain sense, the mishpat is kind of related to the word tzedakah, and my understanding of the word tzedakah, right, we say melech ohev tzedakah or mishpat. Right, they kind of come together, tzedakah and mishpat, because really, the idea behind mishpat and tzedakah is to revert things back to their appropriate state. Especially as we're looking from mishpat from the point of ahava, and the purpose of mishpat is to, and same thing, tzedakah. What's the point of tzedakah? Tzedakah is not charity, like kindness. That's kindness. When we understand tzedakah is okay. Here's a person. He's missing something. He's missing. He's I don't know. He needs to go to a doctor. He's missing $100,000 for the special procedure. So I provide for him $100,000. Why? Because I'm restoring him to the need that he needs. That's tzedakah. And same thing, really, mishpat accomplishes the same thing. It just may be a different tool, but it's in accomplishing the same thing. And the purpose of the mishpat is this guy needs a good punishment. Why? So that he gets restored back to the place where he belongs. Right? So he's not, he swerved from the appropriate road. I got to put him back onto the road. So the point of the mishpat is to put things back into their appropriate, aka ideal state, right? So as a result, all the new, as I said, all the new elevations that are necessary for the world result from this hashkafa, from this analysis. However, we have to go even deeper in this idea to really appreciate what this all means. Okay? So that's why this is a continuation, right? So this is the first framework, right, that he said now, that the idea of mishpat, again, it stems from ahava. That's number one. Number two is that it's restorative to its appropriate state. Okay, and in a level from starting from general to particulars. Okay, and now we need to drill deeper in order to appreciate all of these particulars. And that's what this next section is supposed to be about. So Omra Neshama. So then Neshama interjects and says, "Vadei l'chachma ein soif." But the details, Hashem's wisdom, there's no end. And to appreciate them truly, you will need a lot, right? You will need a lot. So Omar Seichel, so the Seichel responds, Aval al Kein Emar. So that's why the Pasuk in Kahela says, Amarti echkama, I said to myself, I will become wise. But it is far from me, right? You're right, meaning you're right. We're as much as we were going to go deeper into this idea and appreciation, all the details of Hashem's judgment, we will probably not get to all of the myriad details, but we will try. So let's keep going. But what comes out from everything that we have spoken until now, who is we already heard that he is completely distant from all of our possible grasp and appreciation. And his essence is and his essence is nothing like what we can kind of appreciate or even imagine in our thoughts. However, he wanted to emanate, to give to us some sort of hashpoy, some sort of emanations that are related kind of to him for our benefit. And as a result of these emanations, we can refer to him some sort of descriptions, some sort of names, right? Any names that we apply to Hashem or any kind of descriptions, those are not real. Those are just the emanations that he arranged for our benefit. And we speak of his praises according to our limited understanding. All with this we explained above, that for these actions and for Hashem's providence, Hashem innovated some sort of midos. V'chukim, and laws, asher niyachasim elov, that allows us to be related to him. Just like he also created the us with certain characteristics and character traits. So for himself, he also made sort of certain midos in order for us to be able to relate to him. But those midos are not real, so to speak. But at the same time, they're real enough for us that we refer to him by these qualities. Ki hanefesh aval kvar noidalonu ha'hefresh gadol sheben elu tchunas nefesh. However, we know the huge difference between his midos and our midos. Ki hanefesh, our soul, mudba'as ba'oisam atchunos. It is stamped with those qualities, with those characteristics. Behem inyan noisav bo alatzmusa. They are kind of additional aspects to its essence. But regarding the Master, blessed be He, we cannot imagine such a thing. Kirak neida, we only know that with these midos he acts. In other words, these midos are not like things that are stamped onto his nature, right? They're not added to him. They are just what we call, we can imagine, but these are just actions that he does, and we just apply that idea of midos being the source of those actions. It's not that these characteristics are really kind of coined, are stamped upon Hashem, or there's some sort of additional added persona elements to him. We know that he is absolutely removed from all change and happening, or anything that we can recognize upon creations cannot be ascribed to him. We don't attribute these midos to him, but only from that we see the effect of these actions from his emanations and his providence, right? But we don't really understand how these midas are truly in him. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that this is just, I guess, like a lavush, like a sort of, not even a lavush, I wouldn't even say that, but just a way for us to attribute the actions to him. But Dover Zakvar Be'arno Isabi Mekoima, we already explained this in its earlier place. Ukvar Hirchiv L'Daber Al Zeh HaMiyuchat Shebimechaber Merav HaGodol Rambam Zal B'Sefer HaMoyer Shloi. And Rambam already basically explained this idea, the difference between Hashem's essence and our sort of attributes that we attribute to him. Okay, again, I find this fascinating that the only Rishon that he keeps coming back to is the Rambam, which is very interesting. Again, why is it very interesting? And we're going to see in the next paragraph, it's going to come to it again, I believe. Because it's very interesting, because the Rambam is supposed to be, everybody claims at least, that the Rambam is anti all of this. Meaning the whole Kabbalistic idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has some midos, and even though the Ramchal is coming to kind of intellectualize how the midos are not really midos, right? That they're sort of just attributions that we attribute to him through his actions, but at the same time, they're midos. They're a way for us to relate to Hashem. And the Rambam, so many people believe that the Rambam was absolutely anti any sort of formulation of conceptualization towards Hashem, and that the attributes are completely kind of like, how should I say, I don't know, just human-based references as opposed to actual sort of reality, right? So again, so there's almost like a tug of war here between the Ramchal, who's bringing the Rambam back into the Kabbalistic camp, and let's call them the rationalists, which are trying to create a total divide between the Rambam and the Kabbalistic camp. Okay, but anyways, let's move on. So what he's saying till now is that, again, he's saying that that, okay, this is just, in this paragraph is just introducing that the midos that we're talking about are, I don't know, figments of our imagination, you could say. Amnam yadanu vadai ki gam eila hamidas shonim avchinu b'pulosoi. But we also know that these midos that we recognize in Hashem's actions, einam ela dvorim mechudoshim emenu litzarkenu. They are all things that He innovated, right? Innovated from Him, but for our benefit. Kifi arkenu. They are according to our level, not according to His level at all. And all of these general midos that Hashem was innovated for His actions, they are the true source of everything that is done to His creations. Okay? And this is the key point here, is that whatever actions we see in the world, we must recognize that they emanate from some sort of midos that Hashem created in order to enable those actions. So, but this is all an arrangement of Hashem's providence that it was designed for the perfection of all the creations. Kulam inyonim behadroga, they are all arranged in a hierarchy. Inyan gavoya mi inyan, one thing higher than the next. Ad roim kol ha'inyonim hanichlol b'mindois ha'ela, until the apex of all of the things that are included in this midos system that He designed. V'amnam avchonas ha'adroga azois eina nasis ela min ha'pu'ulois. However, we can only appreciate the hierarchy through our analysis of Hashem's actions. When we kind of gather together all the actions that Hashem acts upon His creations, and then define them truly, and we compare and contrast all of the actions side by side, then we can appreciate that there is a hierarchy amongst all of these actions, and therefore one actions may be higher than the other. So then when the so then we relate the midos to Hashem according to these actions that are coming from Him, and in the same order of the actions, in other words, the hierarchy, we also then figure out the hierarchy to the actions, to the midos, right? Through the appreciations of the actions and figuring out their hierarchy, we then understand the hierarchy within the midos. V'hinei nimtza l'chachomim asher hevinu sidrei hanhaga. So we find by true real sages that understood the Seder Anhaga, the order of of providence. Shegozru heyois hamidos ha'ele. I'm not sure what he means by shegozru, that they decreed, the sages decreed that heyois hamidos ha'ele. I don't know exactly what it means that he decreed. I would have said they recognized, but he's saying something more about it. I'm not sure. That they decreed how these midos and these actions are connected to one another. Okay? Not the midos are interrelated, the actions are interrelated. So the Chachomim who understand, I guess, the whole what's the word? The whole design that Hashem designed, they see all the connections. Even though, so that's what these sages told us, that even though each midah is a separate idea, Hashem also arranged that the different midos are tied together with others. until to such a degree that anything really that comes about in the world, any one thing that needs to be completed, they will need additional help from other, midos. Okay, so in other words, that's, I guess, part of the wisdom. He's going to explain that part of the wisdom is right. I mean, in general, even it doesn't have to be even in this, but in general, how do you recognize wisdom? You see something. Everything that we see in the world is a compound, right? And part of wisdom is being able to understand what elements went in, right, to dissect something to its basic elements. And it's hard because, sometimes, how should I say it? You don't know which one is the main element and which one is only a secondary element. And that's part of the wisdom here. There's different midos. They're all interconnected, and they all are necessary to establish any one thing because of their interconnectedness. And part of the wisdom is to appreciate how each midah is playing which part, and which one is the main, and which one is the secondary. Okay. So that's what he's saying. There is deep wisdom with regarding to this kesher, with this interconnectedness. L'das hischabrus kol inyonei hanhaga, to know all of the connections between in the hanhaga, in the providence. Kitaboyos hashalsheles hanichsosos achas beachas, and it's like a chain, like the rings of a chain that enter one another. And again, Rambam Zal, again he's going back to the Rambam. Omar beperak nun dalet min amoirish lo chelak aleph. He says in the 54th parak of chelak aleph in Moreh Nevuchim, Zelushainer, this is his language. Omru, they said, kol tuvi, right? Hashem says, right? I'm gonna show you kol tuvi, all of my goodness, right? So what is kol tuvi? I'm gonna give you all of my goodness. What's the goodness? Hu remez leharois oisoy hanimtsois kulam. That it's a hint that Hashem is going to reveal to him all of these creations. Rotzeloimer, Baharois oisom loy sheyasik tivam v'hikoshram k'tzosam b'k'tzosam. That Hashem will show him the creations, and he will recognize their nature and their interconnectedness, one towards another. Okay. So sometimes these midas relate to each other in the cause and effect kind of way. So therefore you understand through their connectedness everything that's necessary for the cause and effect. Sometimes there is a relationship, a partnership of help, whether a little or whether a lot. Sometimes it's an emanation and a recipient, right? Giving and taking. That a certain innovation comes from one of the midos, and it's received by another midah, right? So that's three different examples of relationships between different midos: cause and effect, a partnership, and a giver and a recipient, right? So again, just think about it. It's cause and effect, right? So one midah causes the other midah, cause and effect. That's one relationship. So in other words, right? Again, cause and effect, right? Then there is partnership, that they're working together, and then there is a giver and a recipient. Okay. Where was the place? Let me give you an example to this. A person who contemplates something that he sees, and he wants to understand its essence. He will first utilize his imagination in order to picture this idea, this thing in his mind. If he doesn't use any other of his faculties, then the only thing he will get is the imagination, the picture. Okay, again, my computer will die in a minute. Right, so if he won't utilize any other faculties, all he gets is a picture. But if he wants to understand it, then after the imagination, then he will also have to initiate his power of understanding. Then he will take this idea and he will break it apart, cut it up, and then he will put it back together piece by piece, to separate what is necessarily to be separated, and to unite what needs to be united. And then he will get a full understanding of the thing that he's trying to understand. Yeah. And all of these things, all these things have to occur in a person in order for him to understand the thing that he desires to understand. Now, these are not actions that are physical. This is happening in his mind. But they need to be activated. Second, so here we find that that the thing that he's imagining, first through the power of imagination, and then it's passed on to his power of contemplation. Right? So in other words, the process of obtaining full knowledge of something goes through different steps. The first step is imagination. The second step is contemplation. So that would be an example of different midos of giving and taking. The koyach imagination is giving something over to the koyach of his boinenus for it to be worked on, right? So that's an example of how different midos initiate something and then receive something from another midah. Okay? So again, that's what he's trying to illustrate, that that's the same thing happens by Hashem's midos, that one midah can then initiate a process of the next midah. Not initiate, but like a conveyor belt, we'll move on to the next midah. V'hinei nimtza b'sidrei anhoga. So what comes out in the organization of Hashem's providence, shekol madrega tachtoina, that all of the lower levels, tisubov min ha'elyon mimenu, were caused by something that above it. V'gam titztorich lo, and it also requires it, until the point that completion of the lower midah, yikones b'derech nister k'tzas shir min masha yikones min elyoina atzma, so that in the lower midah there exists in a hidden format something from the higher midah. Okay, so in other words, since the cause, right, creates the effect, then something of the cause always remains in its background of the effect. So therefore, if Midah A caused Midah B, then some of the ideas or powers of Midah A are kind of in the background, hidden within Midah B, which is the result. Okay? I think it's a beautiful, genius idea. Not that Ramchal needs my, approval, but But the idea that you know when a situation of cause and effect, some of the spirit of the cause is there within the effect, even though effect maybe have been separated from the cause.
So how's it different from what he was before? Like pregnant, you give birth to something else.
Right? It probably isn't. You're right. That's a good point. I don't know if that's necessarily different. It's another description of a similar idea, right? That within the pregnancy, right? Pregnant means that the cause takes it with it. Yeah, I think probably it's the same idea. You're right.
So why is he writing twice? Book big already.
Why is he writing it twice? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Good question. But okay, that's a good question. I mean, I'm assuming that I don't remember exactly what he was talking about over there, but it's definitely a similar. It's the same concepts, but clearly there must be some sort of a different direction that he's using them for. Okay, um, let's see. And we also see for the lower midah uh, different causes, right? And then again, this is beautiful because it applies in real life as well. There's a siba kroiva, there's a direct cause, the siba rechoiga, and a distant cause. Because ze leroiv diktuk hashar, and all of that comes from, um, you know, diktuk with very detailed analysis. Shakol measurement. Shakol mishoyer betachlis chochmamuk. Everything is measured in extreme deep wisdom. Klolei shul davar. So general print idea is Chidosh Adam Baruch Hu minei ashpois. Hakadosh Baruch Hu innovated different types of emanations. Misha orois be'erech. They're precisely measured. V'seder and organized. V'hadroga and hierarchized, whatever, categorized. Shemiklolo is kulam, that it,
What was the rabbi?